Hello everyone, welcome to the Salesforce Admin Interview series. So I'm starting this new interview series. I've got a lot of messages and DMs from a lot of folks asking for the interview series here. So we are starting with Salesforce Admin Interview Questions, and this is the part one of it. We will be having more parts going forward. Since we cannot consolidate all the questions in a single deck or a single part, so we'll be dividing it into multiple and then taking it like that. We'll also be having Salesforce developer interview questions, trigger scenarios, and all that going forward. But let's start with pretty basic, the admin questions here. So I'm pretty excited to start this new series. Let's get started with a few questions here. So the first question, which probably I usually ask, anybody, especially a fresher entering the ecosystem, right, and is interviewing for a fresher, and he claims to have the Salesforce, probably not certification, but maybe a course. A lot of people say that they have like 3 months course and 6 months course and all that. So the first question that comes to my mind is, what is a CRM? Right? Do they know what is a CRM? It is not about Salesforce, but at least you understand what CRM is, right? So let me tell you what CRM is. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. CRM, right? I've also highlighted in the red to make you understand how that word has been derived. And it is basically a technology for managing all your organization's relationships and interactions with the customer, and probably also the potential customers, which we in technical terms mostly call leads, right? So the goal is pretty simple. It is to improve your business relationships, specifically with your customers, right? So a CRM system helps companies stay connected to the customers, streamline their processes, and ultimately it leads to improved productivity. So this is basically what a CRM is, and there are a lot of other CRMs as well, but Salesforce is one of the top-notch CRMs in the world. Moving towards the next question, specifically towards Salesforce. So this is what are objects and fields in Salesforce. Pretty basic, but again, the interviewer can dive deeper into such sort of questions, talking about field types, what are lookup, master details, conversions, and all that. So we'll be talking about all those as well. So starting with what are objects and fields. So let's start with objects. So objects are basically database tables in Salesforce. So you might be aware of other SQL and all that, right? So over there also you have different tables. So similar to that in Salesforce we call those as objects. So objects are database tables in Salesforce used to store information. Pretty simple, right? And then there are two types of objects here. One is a standard object and one is a custom object. And standard object is the one which is like default and is provided by Salesforce, like accounts, opportunities, leads, contacts. And custom object is something you can create on your own, and you want probably have a slightly your not you probably your customer has a slightly different business process. You need some customer database tables, so you can go ahead and create your own custom objects. So this is what object is. And now moving on to the fields. So now we have created a database table, but the table has no value without the columns inside it, and the verticals to store values. So fields are basically columns inside an object, or you can call it inside a database table, and these help you store data values and have different data types. Again, fields can also be custom and standard. So standard objects specifically have a lot of standard fields available. For example, lead has email, first name, last name, right? And similarly contact also has first name, last name, and all those fields. So those are like standard fields, but you can also create custom fields on standard objects as well as on custom objects. So there's no limitation that you cannot create a custom field on a standard object and all that. So that is all possible, but there are specifically limits on that. So I think it is probably 500 fields per object. You cannot exceed that, but apart from that we are all good. So again, an important point to note here is that whenever you create a custom field or a custom object, it is appended by underscore c, which represents a custom field or an object. For example, on account, we have industry, which is like a standard field, and we can also create maybe say account rep, right? A field which will be account underscore rep underscore c. So this underscore c helps you determine that is it a standard field or a custom field, right? And for detailed review and details into the topics, you can probably visit my playlist on Salesforce Admin Basics, and you'll find a deeper session on all these. So with this interview series, the agenda is to cover on a higher level what our questions can be asked. Now, since we discussed about objects which are database tables, then fields which are columns in those database tables, what are records, right? That is the next question probably, because a lot of people are still confused between object and records, and they tend to merge those and identify. Sometimes they feel that records are objects. So just to be clear on that, a record in Salesforce can be compared to a row in a spreadsheet, where sheet is an object, right, which is our object, the database table, and the columns of an Excel sheet are fields, and then the rows, the data we add into those rows are probably the records, right? So for example, a account record is a record that has the company information stored inside fields and object, right? So it is stored in an account object and a lot of fields which are columns of a spreadsheet, and the data inside that spreadsheet is the record. So if you relate it to a spreadsheet, it is very easy to understand, and it adds a lot of value to your knowledge also. So just compare it to a spreadsheet and answer that question like that. Moving forward, into the data types. So the most important ones, like all are important though, but lookup and master detail tend to be confusing at times. So what are lookup and master detail relationships? While lookup is comparatively loosely coupled, and master detail relationship is a lot tighter, right? And in this type of relationship, probably one object is the master and the other one is detail, and the master can also control certain behaviors of the detail object, while in lookup you cannot do that. So like who can view the access is probably controlled by the master. So if you go to the OWD, there is something called as controlled by parent, which determines that this is a detail, and the master controls their access. So anybody with a master access can view the child access. That is how it is, right? So a few points to be noted, from an interview perspective, for MD relationships. MD is basically a master detail relationship. Just to clarify in case you are confused with what MD means. So master detail field is required on all child records. So that is like a meaning of the master detail, right? You cannot have a detail without a master record. Then child records sharing is determined by parent record, as I mentioned, right? Then master records, if deleted, also deletes the child record automatically. This is an important point. So since the detail cannot exist without a master, if you delete the master, the child gets deleted. Right? So these are the certain points you need to remember while creating a master detail relationship. And lookup is like a loosely coupled, even if it is the value is there or not, does not hard. It hardly matters. So the next part is how to convert a lookup to a master detail. So lookup can be converted to a master detail. It is not that complicated. The only criteria is, since all the child records need to have a value, right? So if you add all those values and those values are already there, then you can easily convert it to a lookup, from a lookup to a master detail. Otherwise, you'll have to add values on all the child records and then convert that lookup into a master detail. And since we are talking about conversions, let's also talk about master detail to lookup. So whenever you're converting a master detail to a lookup, you need to make sure that there are no roll-up summaries available there. So if there's any roll-up summary, then it won't convert to a lookup relationship. Now talking about what are junction objects. So this is also something very important, and is also used widely for a many to many relationship. So like lookup and master details are basically for a one to many relationship. That is, you will have one master and it can have multiple details, right? But if you suppose want to have many to many relationship, right? For example, I've put an example here as well. Like there's a subject object and there's a student object. So suppose you have, like, say, maths and science as two subjects, and there can be multiple students to these multiple subjects, and there can be additional subjects like maybe history and mathematics and all those, right? So say Jack is one of the students and Mark is another student, and they both need access to subjects like mathematics, science, and history, right? So it is a many to many relationship. So in this case, what we do is we create a junction object which has like a lookup or a master relationship with both student as well as subject, and we kind of relate them together using this junction object. So this is how, we have many to many relationships in place. And if your interviewer asks you what is many to many relationship or what are junction objects, you can probably give this as an example and help them understand what a junction object is from your perspective. But anywhere where you have many to many, junction objects are the go to thing there. So now, what are record types? So basically, Salesforce record types are a way of grouping many records of one type, for the object. For example, uh, the very basic example I gave is when you are creating an account, which is the company for an organization, and you say, okay, there are multiple. You can categorize accounts into multiple types, right? For example, SMBs, mid-level, and then enterprise, right? So these are three different categories, and you probably run different pick list values, sometimes different processes for all these type of accounts, but they are still accounts, right? They are companies. You cannot have different objects for these because they are still organizations you work with, and they are probably your customers also. So in this case, what we do is we usually create a record type, and basis that we can also differentiate on page layouts. We can have different required fields. We can have different pick list values, and so on. So this adds a lot of value in your business process. Just make sure to understand the record types and all very well. You can also go through my video on record types. You can also go through my videos on the fields in Salesforce, which covers lookups and master details in depth. So this was pretty much about the first session on the admin interview questions, and we'll be coming back with the next series as well. Thanks. Stay tuned.